Hello, Simon here, and today I want to report to you the story of the court ruling from Portugal regarding the RT-PCR test for the detection of infection with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Now, this is a story of potentially outstanding, remarkable, and dramatic implications for every country in the world. And surprisingly or not, the mainstream media everywhere did not pick this story up. So we are going to remedy this now. So the heroes in this story are 4 German tourists, the RT-PCR test itself, and the Court of Appeals in Lisbon. These are the Azores, the archipelago in the midst of the Atlantic Ocean, and this is an autonomous region, which is, it belongs to Portugal. And this place was destination for 4 German tourists who decided to have their vacation there. So they flew in, and prior to their departure from Germany, they took the RT-PCR test in Germany, and all 4 of them were found negative in this test. And upon their arrival, they were required to take another local RT-PCR test. And this time, the results were a little bit different. Whereas 3 of the tourists were found to be negative again, 1 of them was found to be positive. So the regional health authority of the Azores determined that they should be confined to their hotel room for isolation. The confinement should have lasted for 2 weeks, but it lasted more than 14 days. So during this time, of course, naturally, the tourists were required to pay for the hotel expenses, although they were not allowed to leave their room. So having seen this dragging, the tourists filed for a writ of habeas corpus in front of a regional court in the Azores. And this is from a Portuguese newspaper. This is a newspaper, and I've used Google Translate, so please excuse me if this is a little bit than 100% accurate. The original court decided that the deprivation of liberty was not, in fact, under the jurisdiction of the local authorities, because it was only non-binding administrative guidelines for applicants. Okay, so it didn't end here. The judge of the court decided to extract the certificate from the defendant, which is the regional health authority, and he decided to refer the same to the public prosecutor for possible prosecution of criminal proceedings, no less. Amazing. So naturally, the Regional Health Council appealed before the Court of Appeals in Lisbon. And this is where I want to take you now. So this is again from a Portuguese newspaper. This is from the 17th of November, but here is this is the actual ruling, and it is from November 11th. And this is the original, and I want to show you the summary. This is the summary in Portuguese. And again, let's look at the translation. And I want to show you some gems within it. So here, the court states that any diagnosis or any act of health surveillance performed without prior medical observation of the patients and without the intervention of a physician at all, violates several regulations and provisions of the statute of the Odem dos Medicos, and being liable to configure the crime of usurpation of functions. Yeah, so the court decided that this is a usurpation of functions on behalf of the regional council. And let's continue. This doesn't stop here. So further down the document, there is elaboration of the ruling. And I want to say that having read this document, it is very articulate and profound and very well written in my mind. And this is of great importance and significance and dramatic importance and significance for every and each country in the world in this current climate. So what the court says here is, again, in fact, what follows from the facts taken for granted is that none of the applicants was even seen by a doctor, which is frankly inexplicable, given the alleged seriousness of the infection. Let's continue. Okay, so in view of current scientific evidence, this test in itself is incapable of determining beyond reasonable doubt that such positivity corresponds, in fact, to the infection of a person by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is the court ruling. And the court goes on to explain why. And here, I must say that, again, this would seem obvious to professionals or experts in this field, but it needs mentioning to many. So the court says that the number of cycles of the amplification process of the RT-PCR results in the greater or lesser reliability of such tests. We know that. And it goes on to say, it specifies a scientific document by a Rita Jafar et al., which I'm going to show you now. This is it. This time we need no translation. This is from the Journal of Clinical Infectious Diseases, Oxford Academic. And the title is Correlation between 3,790 quantitative polymerase chain reaction, positive samples and positive cell cultures, including 1941 severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus isolates. So the highlight of this is it can be observed that at cycle threshold equals 25, up to 70% of patients remain positive in actual cultures. And at cycles threshold equals 30, this value drops to about 20%. At cycles threshold equal 35, the value we use to report a positive result for PCR is less than 3% of cultures that are positive. So if we use 35, well, even at 30 threshold cycles, only about 20% of the tests yield a true result. And that is at this value of 30, 80% of the people being tested obtain a false positive result, if the result is indeed positive. So, and this number falls dramatically at 35 to less than 3%. So if 35 cycles are performed, about 97% of the people who get a positive result will be a false positive. So this is dramatic, no less. Why is this dramatic? Because most of the countries never use less than 30, and many of them use much more than 35, and so the validity of the results are simply meaningless. Okay, so this is the paper that the court quotes, and you see this is the reference here, and the court continues to describe this. Again, the 25 is 70%, and at 30 it's 20%, and at 35 it's 3% of the samples remain positive. So the court is wise enough to be able to read the scientific paper and understand it very well. And we know that everyone who is skilled in this art knows that this number is critical for the result being meaningful. So this means that if a person, the cycle of 35 or higher, as in most laboratories in the US and in Europe, the chances of a person being infected are less than 3%. The probability of a person receiving false positive is 97% or higher. What follows from these studies is simple. The possible reliability of the PCR tests carried out depends from the outset on the threshold amplification cycles that they contain. So again, 35 cycles, meaning that the reliability is 3% and 97% will be false positive. Amazing. And watch this. In the present case, the number of amplification cycles with which PCR tests are carried out in Portugal, including the Azores and Madeira, is unknown, since we were unable to find any recommendations or limits in this regard. So the court determined that in Portugal, the court was unable to find what actual cycle number is used by the authorities in Portugal, or even if there was one number or many numbers, or what the numbers were. No information whatsoever, complete lack of transparency. So the court noted that. Okay, so, but the court did mention that in most laboratories in the US and Europe, more than or 35 or higher number of cycles are performed. So the court continues to quote from a paper in the prestigious journal Lancet regarding the specific detection of the virus due to strong doubts regarding the fulfillment of the so-called gold standard. And they quote from this, I'm going to show you, this is the Lancet paper, false positive COVID-19 results, hidden problems and costs. So again, this prestigious journal states in this paper, any diagnostic tests results should be interpreted in the context of the pre-test probability of disease. For COVID-19, the pre-test probability assessment includes symptoms, previous medical history of COVID-19, or presence of antibodies, and any potential exposure to COVID-19 and likelihood of an alternative diagnosis. Okay, so this is a very comprehensive paper, and it lists all the shortcomings and problems and doubts associated with the COVID-19 RT-PCR test. Again, any diagnostic test must be interpreted in the context of the actual possibility of the disease existing before its realization. However, more relevantly, there are no scientific data to suggest that low levels of viral RNA by RT-PCR actually equate to any infection, unless the presence of infectious viral particles has been confirmed by laboratory culture methods. So the RT-PCR by itself is deemed worthless unless it is within the context of some clinical findings. So this is, again, this is what the court said. Finally, with many scientific doubts expressed by experts in the field, which are ones that matter here as to reliability of such tests, ignoring the parameters of their performance, and there being no diagnosis made by doctors in the sense of the existence of infection and risk, it would never be possible for this court to determine that the 4 German tourists had higher risk exposure. Okay, so bottom line is the appeal of the autonomous region of the Azores is rejected, and the restitution of liberty to the 4 tourists was immediate. So this is this court ruling is of paramount importance and significance, and apparently the mainstream media hasn't picked it up, and we are doing it here. So thank you for being with me. I hope this was helpful, and I certainly think that it has it needs to be brought to the attention of people all over the world, because this is just earth-shattering, no less. Thank you very much.
אם אהבתם את הסרטון הזה, אתם מוזמנים להצטרף אלינו באתר Nowhere, מקום לדעת, בו אנו משתפים איתכם את הסרטונים שיוטיוב, פייסבוק וטוויטר מנסים לצנזר. הצטרפו אלינו בטלגרם ותמכו בנו בפטריון, כדי שנוכל להמשיך ולחזק את הערוץ ולשתף את האמת על הבריאות והעתיד של כולנו.